This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Welcome everybody to the Easthampton City Council Finance Committee meeting. It's 11/13, 2024, 5:30 p.m. Let's see, we don't have any minutes to approve yet. The mayor's not here. Nobody's from the public is here, and we only have one item of new business on our agenda, I believe, which is the reclassification. So we have our city assessor here to discuss that. Would you like to join us?
Yes, of course. There was other business.
No, it's somehow, I think this is the first time in a while we haven't had any appropriations. So
Okay.
it's just this.
All right. So,
Just one thing before we start, just for the benefit of anyone who might hypothetically be watching this video, we've got some slides right here. We're not going to throw the slideshow up in this meeting, but it will be up and visible in the public hearing that will be in 1 week. So if you're watching this and being like, I'd like to see what that table looks like or whatever, just check in next week.
it is also on the assessor's page for the website if they want to see the PDF version just like this.
Beautiful. All right, perfect.
Okay, Martha Leamy, Principal Assessor. And as you said, we're here for the tax classification. I am here to present you with the options, but there's a few other things just that I think are interesting, good to know. All of this is just information for illustrative purposes. The tax rate can be set by the City Council. Before the tax rate can be set by City Council, must hold public hearing each year to consider the tax rate options available to the city under property tax classification. It's held only after the Board of Assessors has determined final values and classified all property and reported this information to the Department of Revenue, which then will certify our values and which will set up the parameters for the options for that the municipality may adopt. It does not determine what the actual tax rate will be, and no tax rate has been approved as of yet. So we are primarily here to establish either a single tax rate or a split tax rate, but City Council must also vote if they want to adopt a residential exemption or a small commercial exemption, which I will get to after. Just to note how the tax rate is determined in simpler terms, there's two roles, the City Council and Assessor's role. City Council has the appropriations voted and the total amount to be raised minus estimated receipts, and you get the tax levy. And then we have our values. You take the total amount raised, divide by the valuation of all personal property, and you come up with your tax rate. So this says FY25, but these are all FY24 numbers because we don't have any 25. And just the options. So if you use a factor of 1, you keep a single tax rate. So the example I have for the summary of tax rate options, you can see based on FY24, the factor of 1 had a tax rate of $13.56 for both residential and commercial, industrial, and personal property. So if you go up to the maximum of 1.5, it lowers so using that 1.5, you would get a residential tax rate of $12.67, but the commercial rate would go up to $20.34. So using last year's average assessment of $381,001, the homeowner for single families would save $339. But with the average commercial industrial value of $606,646, they would increase $4,113. So you're shifting on a very small portion of our tax base. So it just doesn't really make sense. And just some historical tax rates, starting in 2017, the tax rate of 1621 to last year FY24 of 1356. So our tax rate was low, but our values were also. We were at 87% with residential. Of the levy, we're now up to 88. Our commercial industrial personal property percentage has gone down 1%. And just some neighboring.
Can I just interject for 1 second? When you say that percent of the levy, that's saying like the residential share of the total levy.
Yeah. So condos, multifamilies, so it's class one.
Mhm.
And so that's all residential. So they have the majority of the levy. They pay the majority, and commercial is 12%. So, yeah.
I read that incorrectly at first and thought it was like the amount of the levy that we successfully raised. It was like, how do we only get 12%? Okay.
Oh.
But then I saw it makes sense. I understand. So
Sorry, my explanation is kind of all over the place too.
Great. Thank
My apologies. So that covers some extra information, and the factor of 1 or up to 150 would split the tax rate, increasing the amount of tax the commercial pays. And just note that the levy stays the same. So none of this creates more tax revenue. It just shifts the burden all around. So the residential exemption is another thing the city council has to vote to adopt. So it's a fixed dollar amount that is excluded from the value of each owner-occupied residence. You can go as low as 5% up to 35% of the average assessed value of all residential properties. And again, it doesn't change the total taxable value. It works in communities that have a high rental population, second homes. And so if you look, there's 18 municipalities out of 352, which is now including Devon's. And they're Barnstable, Boston, Brookline, Concord, Cambridge, Chelsea, Everett, the Cape communities. So those are primarily a lot of second homes. So it allows the owner occupied lower valued homes to have a break. Wouldn't really help here because it would be for owner occupied, but it would affect our higher assessed houses. And I mean, we are getting some houses that are assessed in the millions, but there's like not many. So it wouldn't be that fair to shift it to those other residents with the higher values.
and it would probably shift it a lot on the rental housing, which would probably get passed on in terms
Yes.
of rents.
Yep.
So, yeah, okay.
And the last one is the small commercial exemption, which no more than 10% of the assessed value of each eligible commercial property can qualify, but only if the business has an annual average employment of no more than 10 people, as certified by the Department of Employment and Training, and the valuation of the property must be less than 1 million. So it would shift it to the higher valued property, and it would help the lower valued business property owners, but it would not help the small business. It would just go to the real estate. It wouldn't go to the business. So it's not helping small businesses that want to come in. It's only helping the business property owner. And there's only 14 communities that have adopted that. And all of them are out east. And to sum up, the Board of Assessors recommendations for FY25 is to go with a single tax rate for all classes of property, to not adopt a residential exemption, and to not adopt a small commercial exemption.
Okay. Councilors, any questions?
I have a question. Most of this is meant to be educational. And also the auditor would also be helpful to have some input. Like, one of the things I know that we've been, in this last budget cycle, we have a deficit of $1.8 million, right? And I know that there are multiple buckets, right, in which we get revenue in order to be able to kind of pay all of our bills, et cetera, right? I understand that. I completely understand it. Is this at this rate? Is this going to raise enough money for us to be able to overcome said deficit or contribute to the overcoming of said deficit?
It's too early to say this because, as you said, there are like multiple buckets. So there are 5 buckets of revenue which we look at when we're doing the budget. There are missing pieces right now. So this is just one piece. The state cherry sheet is not going to come till like March or April. What is the actual expenditure budget? We don't know that line yet. And it also has to do with the actuals of the current fiscal year to project the upcoming fiscal year. So there are so many missing information at this point. But you know, I would have a better understanding when budget is shaping up and all more of the missing pieces are there. Then I can say it's like where this money is going to stand and how it's going to help. And definitely this year is a reevaluation year, so we might see some change in the new growth. But that
I have the new growth figures.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
when those numbers are like put together, it's a standard. It's a standard formula for tax calculation. Whether it's going to be more or less, it's irrespective because it's that standard state formula we have to follow. As long as we are not hitting the levy ceiling, that's the key at this point. So.
Just to confirm, the decisions we'd be making tonight, whether to accept these recommendations or to go in a different direction, wouldn't necessarily change the amount of revenue raised. It would just change who it's raised from. Like if we lowered the residential rate, that would necessitate the commercial rate being higher. If we gave this residential exemption, it would mean that other properties would be taxed at a higher rate.
Yeah.
This is just determining who bears the burden, not
Yeah.
how big the burden is.
Well, if a split tax rate is adopted and the exemptions are adopted, it is just shifting the burden to other classes or categories of property. So the residential exemption would shift it to higher, but that residential amount, it stays the same. It's just moving it.
Same time, just different size pieces.
Yeah, the split tax rate is going to make the commercial properties pay more. And it sounds great, but the residents would pay less. But thousand more. So
And that's because there's so much more residential real estate
yes,
than commercial that
Yeah.
if you lower the residential rate even a little, you're going to have to raise the commercial rate by quite a bit more in order to counterbalance it from that smaller pool of taxable parcels, right?
yeah, using the maximum of 1.5, residential would pay 12.67 at the max, and commercial would pay 20.34. So that's with such a small commercial base, you don't want to discourage businesses coming in, big, small, because you have balance. So if we start to go up in percentage, then it might be something considered down the road. But seeing as we've gone down a percentage, which is only based on some small businesses might have because personal property is included in that figure also. It's commercial, industrial, and personal property, which would be all the goods of the business, inventory, machinery. So that's included in the split rate for commercial and industrial CIP. But yes, so I meant to mention this, just a few other little tidbits of our, so we now have a data collector and we were able to capture some pretty good growth as compared to last year. So our new growth was $32,307,811, which translates into $438.94. These big numbers, $438,094 in new growth, actual tax dollars, where last year was 210.
Fantastic.
So that's that was good news with having a data collector, being able to be here on property and going out doing cyclical inspections, building inspections, which he's been in the process of doing. And our single-family homes went up 2.9% this year. Condos went up 6.4. I mean, I have the breakdown. I don't have to go. I think the majority is single-family homes. And last year, they went up 11.2.
So that's a big slowdown.
It is. It's not necessarily because sales have slowed down, but looking at just 2024 sales, we're still in the high 80s. So we're allowed to be either 100% market value. We can be 10% over, or we can be 10% below market. And that's just all valid sales. And so we came out, we're looking like we might have to go up again next year. We want to be around 95. If you're too conservative, then you're going to have to go up. If sales, they might be slowing, but they're still selling for over assessed value. So we would have to go up that much more next year. So I think it's kind of best to not be super conservative, like at the below 10%, below market, to be right around 95, 97, which is where we were this year. So we went up a lot last year, so it kind of compensated to not have to go up as high this year.
Okay, great. And when it comes time to actually set the tax rate, we'll have a whole separate conversation about that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, my part of the tax rate is done. Values have been certified by the state today. So the rest is up to all the auditor to put all her numbers. And it's really more like looking back. For FY25, we're looking forward, but things have already been said and done as far as for setting now. It's just getting all the simplified terms, getting it all together to enter into Gateway.
Okay.
If I can say, so once the evaluation or the valuations are approved by BOA, Board of Assessor,
Bureau of Accounts.
Bureau of Assessors.
Oh, the Board of Assessors?
Not the Bureau, the assessing, Chris Wilcox.
Department of Local Services.
There are so many local services. I was like, but mine is BOI, which is Bureau of Accounts. So once that is done, tax classification hearing is done. As long as we are staying with one single rate, which is which she just explained. What I have to do for the financials, that's the first piece of the tax rate recap on the Gateway. The second piece is the financials. For that financials, I have to put all the actuals for 2024 and all the estimates for 2025. That includes everything, including enterprise fund, CPA, general fund. Everything has to be on the actuals and the estimates for 2025, and that has to tie to the 25 approved budget from June of the prior fiscal year. And then there is a magic button we call tax rate adjustment. Once all of those numbers are in and that both information is in, I can go in and do the magic, we call it the magic button, and hit that, and that shows that everything is tying out. At that point, I'll go around, I think some treasurer signs off on the debt side, the board of assessors signs off on a bunch of stuff, I sign off on a bunch of stuff, clerk signs off on things, mayor signs off on certain things. So once all of those things are done, I hit the submit button. And then from there, it takes another 10, first come, first serve kind of thing at DOR. As long as there is no questions, they're very quick at approving the tax rate. But if there are questions, then you go back to the bottom of the line because they are trying to approve 351 communities tax rate. So
Gotcha.
that's the process. So this is the half is done, other half is mine.
When can we expect that?
It's a loaded question.
Next week, we'll sign off on the rates, and the
Yeah.
clerk will sign off. It's the LA5, the options, and then it's good to go with Hadel.
So once I have all the green lights, it's, I would say 2 weeks from that I will submit, and then it's in DR's hand.
Yeah.
But it has to be done by, in order to make sure that all the bills are printed and everything goes to the AP Jones people for billing purposes, and collector gets enough time to do all of their balancing with the assessor side and accounting side, and make sure that AP Jones gets enough time to print all the bills. I think appropriate would be what, December 15th. It should be done by then. So.
Yeah, it seems to be right on schedule as far as like this is concerned.
Because bills have to go out by the 31st.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's what, by December 31st.
yeah. Scary if they don't.
So is any other questions?
Right? I mean, there's no money.
Okay. So, I guess just as far as what I'm thinking is, I personally have, we've had this conversation a few times now, and I think that the recommendations that the Board of Assessors has made, you know, over my whole time on the council, at the very least, of a single tax rate for all classes of property, no residential exemption, and no small commercial exemption. I feel that those make a good deal of sense. How do you both feel about that?
Yeah, I agree. Like we have a small commercial.
Mhm.
We have small commercial business right down the community, and so we would discourage, if we had anything different, I think we would discourage small businesses in the community. And so also we've had a number of small businesses, I think, close because of some of our artists have kind of closed shop, et cetera. So we've lost revenue there, which I think would increase the burden on other small businesses. So it makes sense to follow the recommendations of the board.
Okay. In that case, I will entertain a motion that this committee recommend to the full council the Board of Assessors recommendations for 2025, those being a single tax rate for all classes of properties, no residential exemption, and no small commercial exemption.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. I believe that's all we have to discuss tonight, so I would entertain, unless there's anything else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.